Hi there, folks, and welcome to the very first episode of the Time to Chat podcast. For our very first episode, we're going to start things off with a bang here. We are going to time travel, and we would like to bring you all along with us. So let's start by stepping back in time. I want you to go back to a time when you were a teenager. For me, I'm stepping back into the mid-90s, so I can just hear the Nirvana playing already. Then imagine somebody approaches you and tells you that they have a time machine and they're going to take you to the year 2020. I mean, before you stop and jump into this time machine, what would you have imagined back then what it would have been like in the year 2020? I doubt I'm alone here in thinking that when you stepped into that future, you would have seen dramatic changes, right? Like flying cars and holograms and people running around in metallic clothing for some reason. Who knows, right? But I know I, for one, would have expected to see something quite different than what it is actually like now. We are now just 6 months from the year 2020. And I know definitely I would have been underwhelmed by the lack of the futuristic look. I mean, I suppose our cars are a bit more futuristic looking, maybe a little bit more aerodynamic, I guess. And, if somebody were evil enough to take me into a Starbucks, I suppose I'd be curious about all the handheld screens everybody was staring into. But, by and large, nothing is all that different on the surface. Now, I think anybody who has been an adult wading their way through the last decade or so knows that intuitively things actually have changed, and they've changed a lot. Just not in ways that society as a whole would have anticipated. But things have changed, no doubt, on a scale every bit as big as what teenager you might have imagined. They just haven't happened on the surface. They've happened below the surface. So rather than impacting our outside world, they've been impacting our collective inside world, if you will. So, after visiting 2020, if I had landed back in good old 1994, I would tell people that, on the downside, not much looks different. But on the upside, things seem relatively calm. I mean, we certainly aren't living in some apocalyptic future like Mad Max or something, right? And if you really want to, it can be easy these days to look at things more or less like this. I mean, yeah, it's annoying to see or be one of the people staring at screens all the time or living inside social media and texting. But, I mean, what's the big deal, right? We're all getting along just fine, right? I don't know. So let's take a moment to do a gut check. I mean, is everything just fine? Are people in general making their way through day-to-day life feeling great and at ease? Are we properly adapting to this, quote, advanced world in which we live? I mean, are you specifically? I know it's difficult for me personally. I don't know. Are we harnessing this technology that is now a part of our lives? Or is it harnessing us? And now even a bigger question. And that is, what effect is this modern day lifestyle having on our children? I mean, never in the long and twisted history of humanity have children been raised in environments where not only are they, quote, plugged in to technology all the time, but so are the people that are raising them and are around them on a consistent basis. So what does all this mean? Where will it take us? Is this a time to sound the alarms? Or is this just a fantastic moment in human evolution? Is it somewhere in between? A little bit of both? I don't know. What we can say here at Time to Chat is that we don't really know. We don't have all of the answers. But as it happens, we run a speech and language clinic called Chatterbox here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we serve the children of New Mexico. What we can say is that we believe that we are starting to see things that were previously under the surface, but are starting to boil up above ground now. And having worked with children and families for the better part of 2 decades, we are starting to see changes in the behavior of children and their families. Things are looking different than they did even just a decade ago, or really even 5 years ago already. We are seeing increased developmental delays. We're seeing higher anxieties. We're seeing children that present with behaviors that don't necessarily fit into clearly defined diagnoses like autism or ADD. And we're seeing parents and families that just seem increasingly tuned out and frustrated, or bummed out, if you will. So, as speech-language pathologists, we can offer some insight and suggestions to families, at least from within our bubble. But what we are seeking to do with this podcast is to burst this bubble and to bring people together from different professions and different walks of life so that we can, hopefully, bring some of these changes to the surface and help people navigate through this modern life. We don't think that we have all the answers, but we do know that there are answers. So this Time to Chat podcast is our journey. It's our journey to find these answers and to ensure that these changes happening below the surface don't eventually one day erupt. So we want you to join us in this journey and not just listen, but to also chime in. We want to hear your frustrations and your questions, things that you succeed at, things that you don't succeed at. So without any further ado, let's park our time machines firmly back in the modern day and get to work. Because if there ever were a time to chat, it is now.
Hi, I'm Tanya Friend, and I've been a speech and language pathologist for 13 years. I am also the owner and director of Chatterbox Speech Therapy, a speech therapy practice that serves the children and community in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And I'm Corey Walker. I've been working with children for nearly 20 years, and I was a pioneering app developer in the area of speech and language pathology. We all have gifts in this life, and mine is knowing what makes children tick. Parenting in the modern age comes with uncharted challenges. We'll be bringing you discussions with experts in childhood development and introducing some tough questions and topics.
Together, with our experience and knowledge, we have created this podcast to help you with your child's development and wellness. So, listen up.
Because it's time to chat. So I want to do a little in the way of introductions. We will be the host of Time to Chat. And I want to start with the person who is the true brainchild behind all of this. Her name is Tanya Friend. And as you might imagine, with a last name like that, she has befriended a lot of people in her days. She is the owner and director of our clinic here in Albuquerque. This clinic has truly been her baby over the years, and she's been running it for over 7 years now. But not only is she a fiery entrepreneur, she also works tirelessly, and I do mean all the time, to impact our community for the good. I want to tell you a quick story about her. We had a fall festival where we had a lot of parents and families come and join in lots of fun games. One of the parents asked Tanya if she had any children, and she doesn't. And so she told them no, and they stopped her and said, "Oh, yes, you do," and pointed to all the children running around out there having a great, amazing time. And I found that a poignant story because she really has gone out of her way to make a better life for the people in our community. Over the last 13 years, she has played a part in thousands of children's lives, and she genuinely brings invaluable insight into the changing tides of our modern day. So Tanya, take it away.
Hello, Time to Chat listeners. I am so excited to be starting this journey and see this dream come to fruition. Thank you, Corey, for that heartfelt introduction. I can easily say that story and that moment is one of many that has been the driving force behind my desire to help change lives. Another driving force, possibly the strongest, has been my parents and my family. They have been there every step of the way, encouraging and supporting me. I have 4 beautiful nieces who inspire and motivate me and have been contributors to our creations. Like Corey mentioned, I have been working specifically with children for the bulk of my career as a speech pathologist. I found myself drawn to children even before I decided on my career. There is just something magical about spending time with little humans and allowing ourselves to enter their world. A world that we quickly forget about as we age and get weighed down by the expectations of adulthood. Over the years, I have learned so much from children, and I continue to be amazed by their creativity and resilience. But during the past few years, there has been a dramatic change with the children that come to our clinic. We started to see more severe language delays that were now accompanied by sensory issues, behavioral issues, anxieties, attention deficits, sadness, and even anger and hostility. We also saw how difficult life was becoming for the parents and families of these children. As you can imagine, these things kept me up at night. With a rise in need for our services, a growing wait list, a shortage of therapists, and only so many hours in a day, I knew we had to find a way to reach more people. I also knew I did not have all the answers, and wanted to do what I could to find the answers and share them with as many people as possible. So began the creation of Time to Chat. With Time to Chat, not only do we want to be professionals that you can consult with, but we want to be friends that you have a conversation with. Friends that can relate to your worries, concerns, and questions. We want to open space to talk about big and difficult topics, all while providing answers and helpful ideas and instructions. We are all navigating this crazy thing we call life, and no matter where you are on your journey, it is guaranteed that you are not alone. So, let's begin these conversations. Now, I would like to formally introduce Corey Walker. I met Corey a couple of years ago when he came into Chatterbox to interview for a therapist position. The first thing I noticed about him was a spark and a need to utilize all of his talents and gifts. Just like that, my intuition told me that we were meant to do great things together. At the end of his interview, Corey said to me as he was leaving, "And just so you know, I'm actually really good with kids." He could not have been more correct. Watching Corey with our Chatterbox children is truly magical and warms my heart. They are silly together, laugh together, and take off on new adventures and go to new worlds together. So now, let's hear a little more from Corey and what started him down his path as a child whisperer.
Yes, a child whisperer. I really like that. When I originally told you about the fact that I was good with kids, I remember that moment too. It was something that I had realized, but it wasn't necessarily something that I was really fully embracing at the time. Just because, it can be difficult working with children on a day-to-day basis. But since I've been here at the clinic especially, I've really decided to embrace this and actually lately been trying to dissect it and really identify what it is that I'm good at with kids, and hopefully maybe if I can break it down enough, I can pass that on to other people. We'll see. Working with children is really first and foremost about creating a safe and trusting and imaginative environment. So I do think I can offer a lot in the way of helping people create environments like that. Just a little bit more about me. I'm actually the oldest of 5, but I'm the only one of my mom and dad. They got divorced and then each remarried, and a little bit later down the road, they each had 2 kids. So I was quite a bit older than my younger siblings. And I think part of why I ended up in this profession, and perhaps why I'm good with kids, is because I was always around them, but in a little bit more of a caregiver role. When my youngest brother was very little, I was probably, 8 or 9. He had a pretty difficult childhood. And I think if he was around today, he may have even been diagnosed with autism. And he is most decidedly not. He's now a very thriving and successful lawyer. But he had a lot of troubles coping, a lot of sensory issues when he was little. And obviously it was very hard on him, but it was also really hard on my parents. I remember them at their wits' end often. So I think that this experience helped me understand how to delicately work with children, but also gave me a perspective that not everything fits into a box, and nor should it. I just want parents to know this story because there's a lot of hope out there for parents who have kids with difficulties when they're young. So I hope through the course of this podcast that hopefully I really can dissect some of these things and get them out there so more people can create environments where children can really thrive. And just, I guess, a little bit more, I'm also the parent of 3. I essentially became a stepfather at the wise old age of 22 to my now 24-year-old daughter. And I have 2 sons that are 13 and 7. So I'm really looking forward to the journey of this podcast in hopes that it will make me a better parent and a better clinician. So now that we've kind of time traveled back into our past and let everybody know about our past a little bit, let's look into the future. Why don't you tell us, Tanya, a little bit about some of the guests that we have in store and some of the things that we intend to cover over the next handful of episodes.
We have some great topics already in the works. With summer being in full swing, we have put together a list of activities that you can do with your busy child over the summer break. We will also be having a discussion about how to break away from the traditional approach to speech therapy and the things that you can do at home to expedite your child's progress. A dear friend and a gem that we were so blessed to find, Tiffany Cameron Schretz, will be joining us to talk about the power of music and your child's development. Other interviews and topics include diet and nutrition, child psychology, and mindfulness and meditation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We encourage you to visit our website, www.timetochat.org, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and please feel free to email us with any comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes at timetochat@gmail.com. Like we said, we are here to serve our listeners. We will chat again soon.